My name's Steve Barker, environmental principal at Nisource. I primarily work in Indiana supporting environmental permitting projects, but I'm getting more involved with more Nisource kind of broad initiatives relating to biodiversity and then the CCAA as well. So I kind of go through everything, but again, thank you for the opportunity. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Nisource, we do operate in 6 different states. We got Columbia Gas out of Kentucky, Maryland, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And then NIPSCO is a little bit different, where we have both natural gas and then electric distribution transmission. In Indiana, we also have generation as well. So kind of a broad footprint in the Midwest and Northeast. One thing that's changing as we speak is as we transition out of coal generation, we are getting into new renewables. So we will have changes in enrolled acres, adopted acres, especially as the solar comes online. So there's a lot more to come on that front. But one thing we'll be doing, of course, is tracking all this stuff as we get more acres under our umbrella. So I report up to Brian Cordham. Many of you know Brian. He's been, one of the key stakeholders with the Rights of Way Habitat Working Group, and then participating early in the CCAA development. And so these slides came directly from Brian, who worked with, our VP, and then having that direct line of communication up to the executive leadership team. So kind of what we did, just to try to get the initial buy-in, of course, with our leadership team is, identifying kind of the issues at stake, potential listing, of course, and decision back last year, and then really explaining the risk associated with any potential listing of the monarch. So that would obviously impair our ability to do O&M on rights of way, in addition to any future construction, capital projects, and things like that. So of course, one way to mitigate those risks is to, entering into the CCAA. So these slides are very, very succinct, just trying to get to the core message, and then in getting that buy-in as well. One of the challenges we had is obviously working through, because we have both fee-owned rights of way, and then we have a lot of easements as well. So, understanding some of the underlying easement language, and then, having, coverage not only for Nisource activities, but for the underlying property owners as well. Another slide that was given to our leadership team, kind of just really broadly speaking about our requirements. We're already doing conservation measures, but spelling those out succinctly. Of course, we're going to have monitoring and reporting requirements, additional coordination with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And then the final bullet right here, of course, is the fact that this is a voluntary permit. And so looking at it from that standpoint, if for whatever reason in the future we needed to pull out, wasn't in the best interest of Nisource, we have that option. I don't foresee that happening, but again, just working with our internal stakeholders and our leadership team, just driving that message home, I think went a long ways. Why the CCAA matters, obviously operational flexibility. Kind of what we already talked about, but monarch habitat for our facilities and for our rights of way it's compatible vegetation. So we're primarily driven by safe and reliable energy delivery to our customers. So having that compatible vegetation is critical to do that. The value that it provides for our customers, our local communities, and then these other environmental benefits that are associated with doing it. Obviously, there's a lot of value added. Again, I have to recognize everyone that's been a part of this. Brian, with his leadership, and then really driving this from day one was really important. But we do have other departments that are participating in this. Our vegetation management group, both at the Columbia Gas side with their survey and land group, the NIPSCO forestry team, the environmental department, legal, and all these different functions within the company, and just getting buy-in to help drive this. So, we have an internal sustainability rights of way, like meetings just to help collaborate and then further push these initiatives across the company. And then one thing I've noticed too is as we get into the CCAA implementation, it really complements a lot of things that we're already doing on the IBM side, and then what our ongoing conservation initiatives are. So, and then finally, one thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is, kind of our sustainability and then our biodiversity commitments as well. And so the CCAA will basically go right into that. And then our investors seeing kind of our commitment broadly, it just helps drive, things like the CCAA. Quick lessons learned. This is something that, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Carnaby blue butterfly, but, this is, there were populations in Northwest Indiana. This is a non-migratory species, but it's suffered from habitat fragmentation, maybe a decline in habitat. And then there wasn't more of a broad kind of collaborative kind of movement to restore habitat. Not only that, but connect habitat. So it really just took one catastrophic weather event in 2012 that really caused the population to decline, and it's never recovered since. So what I like about this group is that it's working, on the national front, working across political boundaries. We've since in Indiana started a similar movement, just on a much more regional and then site-specific scale, where we're working directly with federal, state, local environmental NGOs, and then collaborate to help, better suitable habitat for not only species like Carner, but the monarch, and then other things like that. So we're working on conservation area plans and being much more strategic about what we're doing. So as mentioned, Nisource does have a sustainability framework and plan with pretty strong commitments across the environmental, social, and governance. And so if you guys want to know more about this, feel free to jump on the Nisource website. But one key metric is on biodiversity. And so that's one thing that I've been involved with. And as we get into the implementation and reporting and tracking of sustainability and biodiversity, everything we're doing with the monarch butterfly feeds directly into that. So we have a strong commitment. Again, it's posted on our website. It includes wording on avoidance, minimization, restoration, offset. So really looking at zero net loss. How do we improve habitat? Things like that, the implementation of the CCAA and other conservation initiatives. And then really what we're going to be doing moving forward is how we better track and report on things like acres restored, habitat created, things like that. We're also working on more site-specific management plans across Nisource. And so it's like one of the challenges, of course, working across like 6 states is where do you start? And so we started as a part of the biodiversity kind of initiative, we started ranking properties that had nexus to like key biodiversity areas. It could be a federal or state managed land. And that helped us prioritize and then scale down to a level where we can do more site-specific plans. Within these plans, we're developing conservation targets. Largely, a lot of them are going to be like pollinator focused. That's again, suitable habitat, and then really looking at kind of the zero net loss again, and then implementing conservation approaches and activities. With the enrolled acres going to our application, I know there's been some prior presentations on this, but and I'll talk about some of the challenges, but this covers all of our transmission rights of way, both on the electric and gas side, our distribution, which includes electric and gas again, and stations as well, both on the electric substations and then the natural gas regulator stations. In total, we have approximately 76,000 total miles of rights of way. In the enrolled acres, we do have our generation, our facilities that are largely like our operating headquarters, maybe some surplus lands associated with offices and things like that. And then we also have dedicated set-aside lands, conservation areas that might be in some type of like a classified wildlands program. So we have those set aside as well, and then included in our enrolled acres. Similar to other applicants, we got to do a lot of math. We get the centerline data. We approximated width on distribution and transmission rights of way or easements, calculated our acreage, and then right now I think we have around 153,000 acres enrolled. And then, of course, applying the percentages, we have 6,000 acres, or 6,000 adopted acres then. Some of the challenges, and this is stuff that we'll be working on going into 2022 and beyond, is scaling down again, making sure that what we're calling adopted, that's more representative of suitable habitat, kind of weeding out a lot of the areas that would be in like non-suitable habitat, such as ag, pavement, industrial properties, and things like that. So probably get a land cover analysis to zoom in on those areas. One big thing that took a while, again, we started our application back in 2019, and it was formally submitted in roughly this year, this time of year last year in 2020. So we had to navigate through a lot of the easement right issues and making sure we had the coverage for property owners. The geospatial and data collection, again, working across 6 states, is getting that centerline data for both our electric and gas facilities. It was difficult pulling that in. We do have it. Some of our facilities are fairly old, dating back 60 plus years, and if that more. So it's just really getting reliable GIS data. And then making sure, again, we have proper clearance for all the centerline data. And then we did use Cardno to help with, getting the, lot of the estimates associated with both the enrolled and adopted acres, and then working with them to, just to kind of looking at federally state listed species and making sure that we had all the kind of the scale, updating a lot of our GIS for a lot of these areas that might be federally listed. Similarly, like for other applicants, we do have a lot of conservation measures that are identified in the application. We're already doing a lot of this, and it's just right now the only thing we really need to do is report out on it, track it, so forth and so on. AMMs kind of listed already. So the key goal here is next year is to make sure that we have all of these areas identified for listed species and critical habitat, making sure that we're including it in our screening for new projects. So these would be data layers that we can easily add to our GIS system. And then importantly, making sure that these areas are identified for folks doing vegetation management and O&M. So that'll be one thing that we'll be kind of working on as we implement the CCAA then. 2022 action plan. So we'll be integrating the CCAA into our IBM planning. I already talked about the management plans, more to come on that. We have drafted a number of them this year. Of course, monitoring is going to be continuing. We did start our monitoring this year, and then it'll definitely be moving forward. The tracking system is going to be really important as we do conservation activities. Just getting some geospatial data for those areas, some polygons developed so we can better track that, and getting into the hands of our O&M folks. A lot more education. I'll talk a little about the training at the tail end of the presentation. And then the one thing I think is really important to note is the partnerships that I think all of us are working on. But my experience right now is initiatives like this is critical to have support and then leverage with a lot of our partners that are out there. And so I do a lot of coordination with National Park Service, Department of Natural Resources, and other agencies like that. And then having that framework and that collaboration to help drive these projects has been really critical to move some of these things forward. Some examples of things we're already doing. This is in Wheatfield, Indiana. This was a project where probably dates back about 4 years, where we had a right-of-way that was heavily impacted by invasive species, cool Susan grasses, autumn olive, non-native bush honeysuckle. So we started clearing about 4 years ago on this right-of-way, did a lot of site preparation, and then seeded that probably the following year. And then, you get that first flush in the second growing season of black-eyed Susans. And then in that same year, you get that instant result of getting monarch butterflies utilizing the properties. So it was great to see that. And these are the initiatives that we're doing across the company as we speak, and then we'll continue to do as we move forward. This all it's all at various scales too. I mean, that was a 30-acre site. We have other projects that are maybe working on the 200+ acre, restoration site. This is a nice, another good example of a private partnership with another utility. So doing a turf to prairie conversion along a heavily visible road, and taking it from turf to something that's a lot more aesthetically pleasing, and in addition to the pollinator value then. And what I would like to recognize again is that the private partnership. And so if anyone is operating or has adjacent lands with either Columbia Gas or NIPSCO in Indiana, definitely reach out to us. I think the partnerships, they can come in many different forms and scales. So if you see opportunities, definitely reach out to us because we're all open ears. And I'm kind of going through things pretty quickly just to give another overview as far as where we're at as a company. We have a fairly robust environmental construction standard for the company where all these requirements from construction to permitting is all captured in our standards. And what we're doing is really trying to integrate stuff like the CCAA, doing, specifying native seed mixes where feasible, giving proper guidance how to do that, developing site-specific restoration plans on large projects. That's what you see in the upper left-hand corner. And then finally, looking at things like sustainable stormwater design, so where we can integrate native vegetated buffers to provide stormwater functions, so you get the dual functions of pollinator value and then pre-post stormwater benefits. That's one of our substations in Indiana, in the lower left-hand corner. We started utilizing a little bit more techniques such as conservation mowing. Picture on the right, that was down in Wheatfield again at our gen station, where we had a newly installed prairie using kind of mowing to help, during the establishment years 1 through 3. The picture on the right there is basically using conservation mowing to set back undesirable vegetation, controlling that to kind of release maybe more of a native seed bank. So employing this will be integrated into our IBM, and then with the implementation of the CCAA as well. And then finally, just kind of I know I was asked just to maybe talk high level as far as what we're doing for training. So I do want to give a special shout out to Grow With Trees and our Columbia Gas group for developing these training modules. This is for all of Nisource. It was just created this past year. I did go through it, and it's actually pretty beneficial. And so I would encourage you, if you have similar needs for your company or organization, is to reach out with Stan, with Grow Trees, or maybe use this as an example to maybe implement it within your respective organization. So kind of see the different modules, high level, here's the monarch, what the CCAA is, how to do proper identification of both the monarch and then what suitable habitat might be, including identification of milkweeds. And then importantly, for a lot of our planners that are actually doing monitoring, is how to basically do survey 1, 2, 3, and then setting up the plot and things like that. So that's how this is all structured then. So each module includes interactive online learning management system for self-guided training. It's entertaining and informative. There's self checks as you go through the modules. And then next step actions, so dedicated participants can expand beyond their steps listed in the training. So it gives a lot of resources. So we got 40 people that went through it so far. Average training time is roughly one hour per trainee. And then there is a commitment to preserve monarch butterflies. So it's a great opportunity to just further expand knowledge of the monarch, and then how we're implementing the CCAA across the company, especially those that are out in the field doing the work then. And then finally, again, hats off to Grow Trees, who helped us. And then, again, if you guys have questions about any of that, I would encourage you to reach out to Stan for that too then. So with that, I know we're kind of running a little bit behind time, and I went through things pretty quickly. So Iris, I might turn it back over to you. And I know Brian's on this as well. So
unmuted.
Additional questions for us, please let us know.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. So yeah, questions for Steve or Brian? I liked all your photos. You had some great shots there.
Yeah, those are all from Nisource rights of way. So as we get into this too, there'd be a lot more documentation. I think telling the story is really important, both for internal and external stakeholders. So it's just one thing that we'll continue to work on over these next few years.
Hey, Steve, this is Tim with AEP. Just a real quick question. You mentioned you started your application in 2019 and you submitted it in late 2020, or did you submit it this year?
I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't speak well on that. It was late 2020, so about 1 year ago, we formally submitted it.
Okay, it's a long time. Do you have any advice to people who might be holding off until the Fish and Wildlife Service comes out with their decision in terms of how long it would take?
I mean, I think we were able to get a drafted. I mean, we utilized Cardno heavily, on the GIS support, drafting the application. Once we got that data in, we're able to estimate the enrolled and adopted acres. It went pretty smoothly, and Brian, you might want to chime in too, because I know you dealt directly with our legal group, but I think that was one of the things that maybe took a little bit of time, is to navigate through some of that. And so it's more straightforward if we have fee-owned acres that we're enrolling, but something that's on easement, that might have been a slight hang up. And then that's probably what extended the duration of that application.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Steve. It was legal's apprehension to enroll those easement acres because of the uncertainty around whether or not they were going to get coverage. And then when Fish and Wildlife cleared that up and provided that pathway, although it's not as good as I'd like to see it, it was sufficient to get over that hurdle. So it's not like it was taking us that long to put that application together. It was just internal hurdles.
I'm sure we all have those. So thanks, guys.
No, thanks, Tim.
Hey, Steve, thanks for sharing the training modules that Stan and his team did. I think those are really cool. Did you get, it's nice to see how long it took them to go through it. Did you get any feedback from the contractors themselves on just what they thought of it?
I haven't directly, but this is where, Stan, you're on the call. Did what has been the feedback on it from our folks?
I think that the feedback is that it was really helpful and beneficial for them to get introduced to the variety of topics associated with the CCAA, and then also for them to provide that learning opportunity through their mobile devices wherever they are in the field prior to taking the CCAA measurements. How to set out a plot, why they were setting out a plot, what were the thought processes behind it, how this links back to the company larger strategy, and all of the ins and outs. And also having to avoid to bring everybody together in one location, especially during this last year and a half, it was a beneficial tool for them to be instructed in the field and go through it and help everybody set up for taking the correct metrics in the field. And it's the training is geared more towards the boots on the ground. It's geared for the folks that are out there doing the actual work. And it's more tailored to their work, much more so than vegetation managers or to the C-suite. It's a training specifically designed for the boots on the ground.
Cool, thanks. Nice work.
Great. Well, I know we are right at time, so encourage you to reach out to Steve or Brian if you have other questions. And again, thanks, Steve, so much for your presentation. You covered a lot of aspects of Nisource's involvement with the CCAA, which I think is really helpful. And we'll get your recording up on our website with the other case studies, and we'll send that link out when it's ready. So thanks, everyone. Definitely use the full 90 minutes today. So appreciate you hanging on. And again, you'll see a couple emails from us about the Bumblebee agreement and other announcements that we shared today. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any comments or questions.